March 1979. Britain is teetering. On the 28th, James Callaghan's government falls, defeated by a single vote, 311 to 310. The first government toppled this way since 1924. Meanwhile, Roald Dahl settles into his armchair on ITV, introducing tales of the unexpected, twisted stories with endings nobody sees coming. Across the Atlantic Ocean, Egypt and Israel sign a peace treaty in Washington, ending 30 years of war. And NASA takes delivery of Columbia OV-102, the first space shuttle, arriving at Kennedy Space Center to begin an era of reusable spaceflight. Amidst political upheaval and pioneering ambition, the family car remains refreshingly uncomplicated. Some say these estate cars are where practicality meets compromise, built for families who need space without sacrificing dignity. All we know is they're the Hyundai Pony estate, the Lada 1200 Combi, and the Saab 95 estate. This is Four Wheels and Fuel, Season 3, Episode 5. Let's get moving.
Our car industry is perhaps a prime example of the British industrial sickness we hear so much about, with underinvestment, poor labour relations, overmanning. Tonight we've got a film about one British car maker. He's a very senior British Leyland man who put all that behind him and took his skills abroad and went east. Tom Mangold reports on what George Turnbull, a former Leyland director, is up to now. It's a story that reflects the frustrations and the problems of the industry he left behind him.
Hyundai Pony estate. The story began in 1974 when Hyundai did something rather clever. They poached George Turnbull, the man who'd been running Austin and Morris at British Leyland. Now you might think leaving British Leyland for South Korea was a step down. But given BL's habit of building cars that rusted before they left the factory, it was probably a lateral move. Turnbull arrived in Seoul with 5 British engineers and a mission: teach the Koreans how to build a proper car. And unlike at British Leyland, people actually listened to him. To style the thing, Hyundai hired Giugetto Giugiaro, the genius who'd penned everything from the Golf to the Porsche Tapiro. He gave the Pony sharp, angular lines that looked properly modern, which was remarkable considering Hyundai's budget was roughly what Ford spent on coffee. For the oily bits, Mitsubishi chipped in with engines and gearboxes that actually worked, a refreshing change from British Leyland's approach of let's see what breaks first. The result was the Pony range, and by April 1977, the estate variant arrived. Long-roofed, practical, and aimed at families who needed space for the weekly shop without the weekly breakdown. It landed in Europe in 1979 as an honest workhorse. Giugiaro's styling, Turnbull's British expertise, and Mitsubishi's reliable mechanicals. Pop the bonnet, and there's Mitsubishi's 1.4-litre 4-pot, sitting there like a reliable tenant in someone else's house, producing 68 brake horsepower, about as much power as a moderately enthusiastic lawnmower. Getting from 0 to 60 miles per hour took 15.3 seconds, roughly the same time it took to boil a kettle. And if you were patient enough to keep your foot down, you'd eventually hit 92 miles per hour sometime next Tuesday. Fuel economy hovered around 30 miles per gallon if you nursed it like a sickly child. Step inside and you're greeted by cloth seats that offered all the support of a deck chair, a steering wheel positioned somewhere near your knees, and a dashboard designed by someone who'd seen a car interior once in a photograph in poor lighting. The ergonomics were almost right. Almost. As if the team had one job left and decided pub was more important. But you could see out of it brilliantly, thanks to pillars thinner than a politician's promise and doors you could probably fold by hand. Giugiaro's angular styling gave it clean lines and geometric shapes. Origami for people who only owned a ruler. It looked like a Cortina and a Marina had a love child raised in Seoul. Behind the wheel, the Pony was rough, crude but surprisingly smooth. A generation behind the Japanese who by '79 were building cars that actually worked properly. Rear-wheel drive, solid suspension and a tendency to rust so aggressively one observer claimed it rotted faster than an Austin Allegro. Which, given British Leyland standards, is genuinely impressive. But here's the thing, the Pony range was cheap. It was Korea's first proper export, and it proved Seoul could build cars. Grandad bought one to save a few quid, fully aware it'd dissolve by 1982.
Lada, Suomen ostetuin neliovinen perheauto, sarjassa 8 mallia. Lada 1200L, edullinen käyttöauto. Siinä on lämmitettävä takalasi, läpivirtaustuuletus, niskatuet, peruutusvalo. Lada 1200L on turvallinen, se on todellinen perheauto. Tätä autoa Suomi tarvitsee.
Lada 1200 Combi. Europe wanted simple family cars. Fiat built the 124 Familiare, and then something rather unexpected happened. The design was shipped east to the Soviet Union, where engineers rebuilt it for a life of poor quality fuel, unpaved roads, and winters that would make an Italian reconsider their career choices. It became the ultimate automotive boomerang. An Italian estate car went to the USSR, underwent a reinforced makeover at Volsky Automobilny Zavod, or VAZ, and re-entered Europe under a new name, Lada. At Togliatti, the vast factory Fiat helped build, the estate version appeared in 1972 as the VAZ 2102. Western importers called it the Lada 1200 Combi because no one in London or Rotterdam was going to advertise a car as 2102. Underneath, it remained the Fiat 124 Familiare, but re-engineered by a system convinced that cars should survive Siberia, broken roads, and long periods of neglect without complaint. Pop the bonnet and you'll find a 1.2-litre four-cylinder built more for stamina than sophistication. About 60 brake horsepower, a top speed around 85 miles per hour, and a 0 to 60 time that refused to be hurried. A single carburettor handled the breathing, and the 4-speed gearbox had long, deliberate shifts. But it never felt fragile. Everything in the engine bay was accessible and logically arranged, designed for owners who were expected to fix things themselves, even on a snowy day in Omsk. Inside, it was straightforward. An upright dashboard with large switches and heater sliders that could be operated with gloved hands, and seats that held up better than they looked. No frills, no pretense. Only the sort of honest storage that made room for the everyday clutter of motoring, and a toolkit that kept the car going between towns. Visually, it stayed faithful to its Fiat origins. Single headlamps, a flat nose, straight body lines, and a wide tailgate with a loading floor big enough for half a family, a week's shopping, or the household toolbox. It was the simplest Lada to understand. 5 doors, 4 wheels, and even room for the mother-in-law, if you couldn't avoid bringing her. On the road, the 1200 Combi was never quick, never sharp, but always durable. The steering felt heavy at low speeds, the body leaned like a ferry in a crosswind, and the brakes demanded patience. But it always delivered on its promise to start, to drive, and to keep driving, even on roads where many Western cars would abandon their suspension in despair. The Lada 1200 Combi, born in Turin, hardened in Togliatti, and returned to Europe tougher than the Fiat license that created it.
Hallå ja, jag har beställt mig. Den ska vara ekonomisk, den ska vara snygg, den ska rymma hela min familj. En bil för 7.
Just det, Saab 95. Ni får marknadens rymligaste personvagn i sin klass. Idealisk firmabil, en bil för landstället eller semestern. På köpet får ni Saab 95s fyrväxlade accelerationssnabba 42 hästars motor som i kombination med Saabs berömda framhjulsdrift ger er en extra säkerhet på vägen. Saabs sensationella nykonstruktion, den så kallade lufthyveln, ger fri bakåtsikt och därmed ökad säkerhet. Saab 95 har utmärkt värme och dragfri ventilation tack vare de öppningsbara bakre sidorutorna. Saab 95, en svensk bil med flygkvalitet, en elegant kombination av rymlig transportvagn och säker, bekväm familjebil.
En bil för 7.
Saab 95 Estate. Sweden's aircraft engineers decided to build estate cars, and the result was predictably eccentric. The Saab 95, introduced in 1959 as a stretched version of the 93 Saloon, was a 2-door, 7-seater estate that looked like somebody had stretched a teardrop and added a rear hatch. By 1979, it was in its final years. Production ended in February 1978, with only 470 built that last year. But the 95 remained defiantly odd. Originally powered by an 841 cubic centimeters 3-cylinder 2-stroke, it switched in 1967 to Ford Germany's 1.5-litre V4 engine. Yes, a V4. One of the rarest engine configurations in automotive history, and Saab sourced it from the Ford Taunus because it fit where a Volvo B18 wouldn't. Practical? Absolutely. Conventional? Not even slightly. Pop the bonnet and there sits Ford's 1.5-litre V4, producing 65 brake horsepower and feeling every bit as agricultural as that sounds. The V4 configuration meant inherent vibration. Smoothness wasn't the goal, but it delivered flexibility. Third gear was usable from 15 to 55 miles per hour, and while 0 to 60 took roughly 16.8 seconds, top speed reached 96 miles per hour if you were patient. Fuel economy settled around 25 to 28 miles per gallon, and the freewheeling device, a roller clutch from the 2-stroke days, allowed you to coast downhill like a glider pilot.
May we present the Saab 95, your new dream car. Saab 95, the new station wagon, combining elegant styling with practical design. How about this for room in it? 5 adults and an extra seat for 2 children. You need extra luggage space? Abacadabra. The new Saab 95 carries a 660-pound load and 2 adults besides. Your Saab 95 is also a first-class hotel room. Pleasant dreams. The Saab 95 with a 42 horsepower engine, 4-speed transmission gearbox, is fast and eager to accelerate. Low running costs and Saab leech-like road holding. The car of your dreams. The family car with aircraft quality. The Saab 95. Saab, the Swedish car with aircraft quality.
Inside, Swedish minimalism reigned. A large diameter steering wheel, switchgear designed by people who built aeroplanes, and a dashboard inspired by the cockpit of the Saab 21 fighter jet. The rear-facing third-row bench seat, dropped in 1976, turned the 95 into a mobile nausea device for small children. Functional, sparse, utterly devoid of frippery. The exterior carried classic Saab DNA, a rounded, wind-cheating nose, flush-mounted headlamps, and a front-hinged bonnet to keep snow off the windscreen. At the back, the vertically cut tail and upright glass turned the teardrop heritage into something far more practical. A proper load carrier. 2 doors, compact wheelbase, front-wheel drive. On the road, the 95 wasn't brilliant, but it was better than you expected. The worm and roller steering needed real intent. Yet, once the car settled, the front-wheel drive and compliant suspension gave it more grip than its shape suggested. The Saab 95, built by aircraft engineers, powered by Ford, and beloved by precisely nobody who valued normalcy. The Hyundai Pony, Korea's first proper car cobbled together from borrowed parts. The Lada 1200 Combi, built for Siberian winters with a 21-piece toolkit and suspension that could handle a moonscape. And the Saab 95, powered by a Ford V4 that vibrated like a paint shaker but gripped like glue. What's your story with these cars? Ever driven one, fixed one, or watched one rust away in a driveway? Drop your memories below. I read every comment. Hit like if you enjoyed this, subscribe for more motoring history, and if you fancy supporting the channel, buy me a coffee, links in the description. Next time, March 1979 returns with 3 contrasts. The Triumph Dolomite Sprint, the first-generation Honda Prelude, and the imposing Opel Diplomat. This is 4 Wheels and Fuel. Thanks for riding along.